Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!
Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. And now, Duke Durango.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. As you can see, I am here by myself today. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to do almost like a little reaction thing, not because I'm going to jump on the reaction video train, just because there's been something that's been on my mind literally for years, and so something I want to talk about. And I also am going to encourage you guys to get on board. Let's have a discussion and tell me if I'm insane or not. First, I want to start with I disagree with Chael Sonnen. I'm just going to say it, and I say it lightly. I'm a big Chael Sonnen fan. I was a fan when he was a fighter. I thought he was one of the best heels the UFC's ever seen. I watch a lot of the content that he produces online. I consistently watch the stuff he puts out. One of the things that Chael consistently talks about is he often brings up the Conor McGregor Floyd Mayweather boxing fight, and he goes on about how competitive it was and how Conor had never boxed before, and this was the first time that Conor was in a competitive boxing only fight, and that he did so well. And Conor did do well. I do not want to minimize or disrespect or take away from anything he did in the ring with Floyd Mayweather, because he definitely didn't look out of place, didn't look like he didn't belong. But where I would push back with Chael Sonnen is that I don't think it was as close as Chael sees it. And if any of you guys are Chael Sonnen fans, you'll understand what I mean, in that he often says that boxing isn't necessarily a sport because not enough people do it. And the fact that McGregor was able to get in there as basically a first timer and look that good against perhaps one of the greatest to ever do it kind of diminishes how good these, the top level boxers are. And first of all, I want to say probably what it shows more is what an elite level athlete Conor McGregor is. The fact that he can get in there with a guy like Floyd Mayweather in his first competitive boxing match. One of the things I think that Chael's also minimizing is the amount of time that Conor McGregor has spent working on his striking. I mean, if you watch his career, it's not like it was built on wrestling. Conor McGregor's entire body of work is built on knocking guys out. Show me the submission. So I don't want to minimize either athlete, and I certainly don't want to disrespect Chael Sonnen, but what I will say is that Conor McGregor has been training to box his entire life. The fact that he got in there one time and actually boxed, sort of a technicality to me. There's a lot of different things in, MMA to boxing stance, duration of fight, kind of rest periods and things like times you can rest, things like that. But I definitely don't think that Conor McGregor, although he looked good, I don't think it was all Conor McGregor. I'm going to say that maybe Chael Sonnen got worked a little bit on this one. And again, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but what I will say is anybody that watches Floyd Mayweather fight knows that traditionally he's a slow starter anyways. So his first few rounds are throwaways. Generally, he's warming up. He's getting the guy's timing down. He's getting the guy's movement down. He's slipping and rolling, just kind of feeling things out. And if you watch McGregor Mayweather, I rewatched it just so I could make sure I still hold the same opinion all these years later. But the one thing I'll say is, first and foremost, Floyd Mayweather did not throw a punch for the first 55 seconds of that fight. I think he'd throw by 90 seconds in, he'd thrown 2 punches. So for a guy that fights at that weight, to me, that's a little bit uncommon. So I'm certainly not going to sit here and tell you that I'm a, combative fighting expert in any way, shape, or form, but I've spent a lot of time watching and being around combat athletes. And so I think I do have a valid opinion on this. And I think that when you watch rounds 1 through 3 of that fight, which it's fair to say those rounds go to Conor. And I think it's really, really easy to say that because Conor's at least doing something. He's on top of Floyd. He's throwing punches, nothing damaging. Like that's the one thing I want to point out is when you watch this fight, Conor lands a couple of good shots, and I don't want to take that away. He does land some hard punches on, maybe the best defensive fighter of all time. So that in itself is an accomplishment in my opinion, because most of us journeymen out there couldn't land a shot. So I think that it's really important to recognize Conor's accomplishment here, but also I think it's important to really watch those 3 rounds and know when a guy's being carried or when a guy's being just felt out. And just Conor has awkward timing. He's extremely unorthodox. He stands with his hand out and throws a jab real quick, because the arm's up, halfway extended already. So I think he's got an awkward style that took Mayweather a little bit of time to adjust to. So 1, 2, 3 for sure go to Conor McGregor. Round 4, you actually see Floyd Mayweather start to go to work. Floyd starts to throw some punches, and he starts to walk McGregor down a little bit. One thing I noticed in this round is McGregor throws some really awkward punches, like some almost slappy stuff. He threw a couple hammer fists. Some of that made him look a little bit amateurish. And I think but also in fairness to him, I think when you've been fighting for 15 years in that style, it's hard to just throw that away. So I don't, I'm not saying that as a good, bad. That's just simply something I'm noting. Some of those punches just looked horribly awkward in my opinion. But I think in my opinion, Floyd wins round 4, right? So you got Conor up 3-1. He's not pitching a shutout. I think Chael says he pitches a shutout through round 4. And I think, and even if you want to say that Conor landed out more shots, I'm not going to sit here and count punches with you, but what I will say is the punches that Mayweather landed throughout this whole fight meant something. Most of the punches McGregor through, probably wouldn't have knocked me out, quite frankly. And I'm not the fittest guy in the league, but I just don't think there was anything on those punches. I don't think there's no matter what McGregor was landing in that fight, excuse me, there was never ever a point where Mayweather was going to be in trouble from anything. McGregor's got that bomb of a left hand, but when you put a bigger glove on there, it kind of changes that. And I think that can't be missed either. So some of that's, you lose some speed with a heavier glove, obviously. After round 4, I really think Floyd Mayweather kind of takes over this fight. Rounds 5 and 6, he really, really continues to walk Conor down, and he's landed some good punches. His defense is stellar. At this point, he's kind of, he's hit his stride. And I really think that, Conor's still doing a good job through these rounds of disrupting Mayweather's timing. And the commentators really, really put over that on McGregor as well. So, but at the same time, any punches McGregor lands, there's kind of nothing there. It's just sort of tap, tap, tap. Where when Mayweather lands a punch, it's more meaningful. And I'm somebody that's kind of, who's landing, who's more aggressive, who's landing the more meaningful punches. And I don't think you can argue that definitely rounds 4, 5, 6, and probably even into round 7, that Mayweather's definitely landing the more meaningful punches. And, kind of carrying McGregor through that is over. I think what you see kind of going forward from round 7, because it was really like 4 or 5, 4 through 7. I think that Mayweather handled McGregor pretty easily. Round 8, when you watch round 8, I think that's when McGregor, kind of knew he was about to blow up. Maybe if I had to just throw a guess out there. So he put it all out. He threw everything out in round 8, trying to do something, and came up unfortunately quite short. But again, he hit multiple times and multiple shots on one of the greatest defensive fighters in the world. So please don't think that I'm just sitting here trying to piss on Conor McGregor, because that's not at all what I'm doing. But what I am saying is this fight isn't as close as people make it seem, or maybe some commentators, Chael Sonnen, have made it sound, because those first 3 rounds, for sure, Mayweather's literally doing nothing. Like, you can't look at that as like, McGregor simply like beating the brakes off him in those first 3 rounds, because that's not the case either. He wins those rounds, but it's not like there's any damage done. It's not like Mayweather was ever in any trouble. And once Mayweather gets his timing down and Mayweather gets warm and gets moving, rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, Conor McGregor is walking backward the whole time. Round 8 comes out. I think Conor took round 8. I think he did enough to win that round. I think he landed, he scored more. Again, not a lot of meaningful punches, but he definitely scored more. Unfortunately, that was pretty much, that was about the end of the fight for Conor McGregor, because at that point, his legs are gone. He comes out in round 9 and he's gassed. And that to me is one of the most disappointing things. And I want to make this clear. This is extremely easy to sit from the office chair in my basement and say, he blew up and came in out of shape, because that's not at all what I'm saying. What I am saying, it's really disappointing to see a guy blow up with 3 rounds left in a fight. I've never been in there at that level, so I'm not going to claim what it's like. I'm not going to tell you what he should have done or what he could have done. All I could say is it's disappointing to see a guy go out like that, because Conor McGregor didn't necessarily get knocked out because Floyd Mayweather had that power over him. He was definitely throwing the harder punches in this fight. But Conor got knocked out because he was too tired to defend himself. And the unfortunate thing is we've seen that with we've seen that with Conor before. This was, for all intents and purposes, a very entertaining fight. I don't think it was boring. I think Conor McGregor seriously represented himself and his community extremely well. He came out, he did his work. The two of them sold the heck out of this pay-per-view. If you remember those, thinking back 3 or 4 city press tour that was like selling out arenas. Things like that are kind of unheard of. So, the fact that these two guys could go out, draw $100 million each, from some of the stuff you hear, somebody might have took a bath on that pay-per-view. But at the same time, the fact that somebody thought they could do that kind of business is absolutely incredible to me. So good on him for that. But I definitely disagree with Chael Sonnen in that, he really likes to say that Conor McGregor, I think he sees Conor did better than he did. And I don't want to take anything away from Conor McGregor, but I also don't want to push him up too high. Because what you're about to see, where this dovetails and goes into a different conversation, is you're about to see a bunch of MMA fighters want to cross over and start fighting boxers. And not every boxer starts slow like Floyd Mayweather. Not every boxer is going to carry a guy for the first 3 rounds before he actually starts working on him to, take him out in the 10th round. So I think that the MMA community, while I think that they would destroy boxers faster than a boxer can beat an MMA guy in a boxing fight, I think you have to be very cautious anytime you're crossing over into somebody else's world. Anytime somebody's done something their entire life, versus you that maybe have done something for 5, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, it's different when it's in your DNA. And oftentimes the level of coaching becomes very different. And I think that the skill sets, boxing is not the most technical sport in that there's only so many punches you can throw. What changes is the timing and the angles. And I think that's important to understand, because when you're fighting MMA, the timing and the angles are completely different when you have to worry about getting taken down or getting kicked in the face. So I think that while the same, they're extremely different. So the crossover can be really tough. for any boxer out there that wants to, kind of get on a high horse and talk shit about MMA fighters, I think that's a really dangerous thing, because there's a reason the MMA fighters are willing to cross in, and you don't hear a lot of boxers saying, "Hey, let me jump into that octagon with you." It would just not be good. You just don't see a lot of top level boxers that would win in a cage fight, and not because it's not a great skill, and it's not, I don't want to minimize how tough boxers are. Having said that, I think if you put them in a anything goes kind of fight, I think that it's a skill set that leaves something to the imagination. One of the latest rumors I'm hearing is that I believe Kamaru Usman wants to take on Canelo Alvarez. And I think that's a really, really, really dangerous fight, because you're getting in there with a guy who's probably got some of the fastest hands on the planet. And I think that, Usman had spent a career wrestling, really. I mean, he's been striking against somebody that's been striking for, a decade. And you want to get in there against a really, 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 really elite level boxer. And I think that's a gain. I think that's a dangerous thing. And I think that, Mark Henry tells a great story about when he left the WWE and went to compete in the World's Strongest Man. And the one thing he tells is that when he was talking to Vince McMahon about going to become the World's Strongest Man, one of the things Vince said to him was, "Hey, there's no room for the world's second strongest man." And I think that, when you want to finish a contract like Francis Ngannou is about to do, and go over and do an exhibition in boxing and then come back to MMA, if you go over there and get knocked out by Tyson Fury, you can come back and you're still going to be a big star. And I don't want to, but that will, whether you realize it or not, that will tarnish your legacy, and that will diminish the way people see you for the next fight. Am I saying it's something Francis Ngannou should or should not do? You do what you got to do, man. You got a very, very short time to put a buck in the tail in what you do. So it's kind of one of those things, you just got to roll with it. And if you can get a huge money fight, you have to take that opportunity, because, with the UFC paying him $600,000 to defend the world title, excuse me, I think is absolutely ludicrous. So, by all means, hopefully Francis Ngannou goes and gets paid. But at the same time, if you lose to Tyson Fury and you're without contract at that time, your negotiating power just went way, way down. So I think it would be in Francis's best interest to make sure there's a Tyson Fury clause in his contract. But you got to be careful, because the UFC may not want damaged goods after you get, if in the event you may get knocked out by, Tyson Fury, which is very, 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 very possible. But it's also, very, very possible that Tyson Fury gets knocked out by Francis Ngannou, at which point Francis is a massive star and can literally write his own contract and ask for as much money as he wants. So, there's a lot to risk and there's a lot to gain there. And that, to me, is one of the more interesting things going on right now in MMA, quite frankly. But boxers getting into the ring with MMA guys, I think that I don't know, man. I don't think the most elite level straight up MMA striker can legitimately compete with the most elite level boxer. And I mean, when I'm talking elite level, I'm talking world champion level. And so, I'm going to leave you with that today, folks. Leave your thoughts, leave your comments, send me a direct message, a PM, whatever you want. Let me know what you think. Did am I wrong? Did Mayweather carry McGregor? Did McGregor take that fight to Floyd Mayweather in the first 3 rounds and I saw it completely wrong? I don't think I did, but maybe I am. So at any rate, in this one case, I'm going to just say this. Duke Durango is right and Chael Sonnen is incorrect. But I love you, Chael. You're a master at what you do. Thank you so much for the content you produce. And all right, we'll talk to you next time, everybody.
Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!